people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
The undisputed super featherweight champion of the world, Alicia, the Bumgarner.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Another installment of Ring IQ Hate Mail, as the hate mail continues to pour in for what is a caricature of Clarissa Shields, who's been known for years as having a big mouth, and thus the caricature was depicted as having a big mouth. For that, Cleo Alvarez says, typical. People do some anti-black shit, then get called on it, and get defensive. Your anti-black sentiments are showing.
Because I have to like Clarissa Shields?
No, I don't like her either, but the dude who talked about the media exaggerating black people's features in the past was spot on. The picture is offensive. You don't have to like Shields to see that.
All I see is you expanding what was said about one person to an entire group of people, an entire race, when I'm not talking about an entire race. I'm talking about Clarissa specifically.
And because you can't handle that, you want to apply it as a blanket statement about an entire demographic of people when not talking about an entire demographic of people. Call me sad, he said. Regardless of how people feel about Shields, the pick is disgraceful. You can get your point across without sharing an image manipulated to have racist, colorist undertones. Y'all know what y'all be doing.
Calling a big mouth a big mouth?
The old saying goes, a hit dog will holler. If you find yourself defending Clarissa Shields, it's because you yourself identify with a lot of her behaviors, the ones that have made her subject to criticism over the years, so that when she's depicted in an unflattering light, you take it as a personal attack.
You know, that sounds a lot to me like a you problem.
If what you are expecting is for me to play with kid gloves on as to not offend you when I'm not even talking about you,
get over yourself.
because when someone says something unflattering about me, I don't expand the conversation to other people that fit the same demographic as I do.
Like what you're doing.
Pretending that an unflattering comment or an unflattering image of Clarissa Shields applies to everyone. You're just co-opting civil rights issues that have long since passed in order to elicit both silence and subjugation.
Pouting when you can't get it.
I get insulted online all the time. I get called every name in the book but Adam. And you know what I don't do? I don't pretend that people are talking about an entire demographic of people, an entire group of people, the way you guys are doing, because I'm not a weak little bitch.
Somebody says something about me, I interpret it as them saying something about me.
But if I say something unflattering about Clarissa, oh, I must be talking about an entire demo. Alicia Baumgartner reacted to the caricature saying the picture is not cute, to which Olaye responded, liking altered racist pics of another black woman, to which Alexia Apples replied, this is what I'm trying to understand. Like, read the room.
Let's do that. Your trump card has been declined.
You are too accustomed to throwing out a baseless accusation so willy-nilly that it's lost all its meaning.
It's power.
And if this somehow speaks to some internal trauma that you yourself might have, here's a newsflash. I'm not your goddamn therapist.
Whatever you got going on the inside is between you, God, and your psychiatrist.
It's not my job to tailor my reactions, my responses, my opinions to cater to whatever you have going on internally, and however you choose to interpret the same stimuli everybody else is seeing, not arriving at the same conclusions as you, because what you want to do is elicit silence and subjugation by making baseless accusations.
I'm not gonna grovel to you based on what names you call me or what baseless accusations you make. If that's what you're comfortable thinking, then think that.
Boxing Kingdom tweeted, most valuable promotions are refusing to give Clarissa Shields ringside tickets to watch the all-female Netflix fight card on July 11th, which is headlined by the Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor trilogy. Despite being the biggest name in women's boxing and pound-for-pound #1, Clarissa will need to buy the tickets herself to attend the event.
What's this guy, retarded?
No, he's just engagement farming, looking to elicit reactions by making more baseless claims. If Clarissa were the biggest name in women's boxing, why do both Katie and Amanda make more money than she does?
One would think that if you're the biggest name in the sport, you make the most money, but they have been making more money than her for years now.
Pound for pound number one, Clarissa being pound for pound number one is subject to some debate. You can conduct an independent poll right now, and I promise that the results are not unanimous. They're not going to tell that story, that she is the consensus number one.
Part of the fiasco is that Clarissa was expecting to get comped tickets to an MVP show, which is funny because she's been taking shots at MVP's co-owner for about 5 years now.
Jake Paul.
You must not have a good memory, but need I remind you that it was in circa 2020, late 2020 or early 2021, when Clarissa Shields out of the clear blue sky started taking shots at Jake Paul over his knockout win of Nate Robinson, a basketball player.
To which Clarissa Shields reacted, without any provocation from Jake, I will beat the shit out of Jake Paul.
Same way she did that without provocation from Jake is the same way she did that without provocation from Keith Thurman.
Another guy that she regularly takes shots at, all because she thinks she's entitled to. She thinks she can. So when that same Jake Paul doesn't give you comp tickets to one of his shows,
after 5 years of you taking shots at him and taking shots at his prized stallion, Amanda Serrano.
That's what she's been doing for the last 2 or 3 years as Amanda's star was rising in her earning power.
Clarissa's jealous.
I got 2 gold medals and I'm undisputed.
Who cares? You still can't draw. You still don't earn what Amanda earned.
You still don't. And after 5 years of you taking shots at them, they are under no obligation to extend you that courtesy.
Just mad you ain't got it like that.
And you never will, because you can't get out of your own way. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it, nor am I subject to the oversensitivity of a few crybabies throwing their toys out of the pram. I've long been a connoisseur of chocolate ass.
But that affinity does not extend to Clarissa Shields. As far as I'm concerned, she is a repulsive, repugnant individual.
Ew.
Ugly on the inside and out.
I won't hesitate to say it, the same way that she doesn't hesitate to take shots at Jake Paul, at Amanda Serrano, at Keith Thurman, and anybody else with impunity. The same way she is entitled to her opinions of them, I am entitled to my opinions of her, and she's disgusting.
If you don't like to hear me say that, maybe you need to go somewhere else and stop hate watching. Stop lurking.
Stop waiting for my tune to change. Stop waiting for me to play by your rules. You ain't the boss of me.
That's crazy, yo. What did Al, why did Al fumble that Boots bag?
Damn. Why didn't they sign that man?
What?
He was right there. He was right there
under their nose. You got the dude who rock with you, Espinoza, vouching for him, giving him little itty bitty fights just to keep him there till Al finally realized what he had, and Al never gave the offer, or not a good enough offer. Got done foul with Al, but Eddie, in a year, that's nasty when you add it up. That in a year, my man sold over 31,000 tickets, got 3 belts, lean heel champ, and essentially now is the big fight in the division. Shit, he was begging for a fight when he was with PBC. Now he the big fight.
It's a stout observation from young Nestor that Al Haymon had the same opportunity to sign Jaron Ennis that Eddie Hearn had.
Same opportunity for a longer duration of time, but perhaps not the resources, because you have to remember exactly how it happened.
Remember,
on paper, Boots was never actually a PBC fighter. He was signed to Cameron Duncan.
Cameron Duncan was essentially renting out Jaron Ennis to the Showtime platform, who had him fighting on PBC shows, even though he himself was not a PBC fighter. You want to pay attention to Cameron Duncan's passing in January of last year. It was announced that at 67 years old in Vegas, Cameron Duncan had passed away. But when he did, Boots was still under contract to him.
He had to go to court in order to achieve free agency before eventually migrating to Matchroom.
By this time, the PBC had already lost Fox as a broadcaster and Showtime the year before. They had just moved over to Amazon. So perhaps Al Haymon's PBC did not have the resources at that time to make Jaron Ennis a better offer than the offer that Matchroom made him. So when you're telling yourself, why didn't Al Haymon sign this guy, it wasn't all down to Al Haymon.
Team Ennis have to be on board too, and maybe they weren't. having spent some time around those PBC shows and those PBC fighters and knowing what they know about the inner workings, to them, going to Matchroom seemed like the better move. And they were right, because just imagine if Boots would have signed to the PBC instead of Matchroom.
Boots was on the Showtime platform for years. He was on that platform much longer than he's been on DAZN. And the whole time he was there, it never dawned on them to get Boots a hometown fight, bring him back to Philly. That doesn't happen until Matchroom steps in.
The only thing Showtime was doing with Boots was using him as a shield to protect Errol Spence, billing him as the anti-Crawford. That's the most they did with Boots.
But they didn't get him a hometown fight, and they didn't get him any high-profile fights, even though they had all the welterweights. Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence. The whole time that Boots was there, how close was he to landing any of those fights?
Mario Barrios, your Denis Ugas.
How close was he to landing any of those fights?
Wasn't close at all.
Matchroom has provided Jaron Ennis with not one, but two hometown fights and a unification match. So just imagine if he went the other way and stayed at the PBC, he may not have gotten any of that, and he may not have been as active as he has been the last 12 months.
Because last year, the PBC only did 5 shows.
So he wouldn't have had very many opportunities to get out there if he went with them instead of Matchroom. And last year, Gervonta Davis, who is one of the PBC's only flagship fighters, he only fought once.
The Frank Martin fight.
David Benavidez, their other flagship fighter, he only fought once.
The Alexander Vazdik fight.
So they were at a point where they could only get their flagship fighters, their star fighters, one fight the entire calendar year. Just imagine if Boots would have made that mistake. Just imagine if he would have signed to the PBC instead of Matchroom, he would not have fought 3 times in 9 months.
Because they didn't.
Would have been a big mistake, and there is an element of tribalism that some would have preferred to see Jaron Ennis at the PBC, in spite of all of this, for no other reason than they view it as a black-owned business.
At the risk of broaching a taboo subject underneath it all, that's why some people are still holding out hope that he will go there.
But I fail to see why he would at this point. That if you didn't need to go over there to land a Stanionis fight, why would you go there now? And if you are close to moving up to the junior middleweight division, they don't have all the junior middleweights. Currently, there are 2 alphabet titles on that side of the street. But by the time Boots moves up, that could change. What if Sebastian Fundora loses his 2 titles to Xander Zayas?
There goes the neighborhood.
It didn't make sense for Boots to go with the PBC before, and it makes even less sense now that Matchroom has done all the heavy lifting and all the legwork to put him in a power position.
PBC's not as invested in Mario Barrios. Top Rank is not as invested in Brian Norman as Matchroom is invested in Jaron Ennis.
It's a valid question to ask. That he was within arm's reach, he was within proximity of Al Haymon's PBC. Why didn't Al sign him? Maybe it all didn't boil down to Al and what Al wants. That some bit of it was Team Ennis making an executive decision.
They felt they would be better off at Matchroom, and time has proven them right.
I'd rather see Boots versus Spence or Boots versus Pac-Man. Which one of them gets more credit? He need a big name like that. So Hardcore is going to give him more credit for Boots versus Earl because Earl is only 1 loss. It's hard to say he's washed up with 1 loss. And then Pacquiao, it's hard to say he's not the bigger fight because he touches more casual fans. You know what I'm saying? So if you had to do one of those 2, it just sounds like the Pacquiao fight might be bigger because it's what you're trying to do. You obviously taking those fights to make your name.
It's actually a very interesting question. What fight would be bigger for Jaron Ennis, Manny Pacquiao or Errol Spence? I happen to disagree. I think the Spence fight would be bigger because of what Nestor Gibbs said. Because Errol only lost 1 fight, whereas Manny, he has several losses. He's in his mid-40s. He's been out of the ring for something like 2 or 3 years now, coming off a loss to your Denis Ugas that he never avenged and he never rebounded from.
Oh, sure. Manny in his heyday was a much bigger draw than Errol Spence Jr. went on to be, but that was many, many years ago, and that name value has depreciated over time. Don't forget what the box office numbers were for the Ugas fight. Just north of 200,000. It wasn't a lot.
Now, you could argue that a fight with Boots might draw a bigger crowd And it might, but how much bigger? Because you're only going to be able to convince but so many people that Manny Pacquiao still has it in his mid-40s? It would take a lot of work to rehabilitate him and to get the boxing fans back on his side, enough that they think a fight between him and Ennis would be competitive. Here today, no one thinks that fight would be competitive.
Yeah, Manny would have to make a comeback similar to George Foreman's comeback in what was the second phase of his heavyweight career. And even then, when George came back, he was a younger man then, in his late 30s, than Manny is now in his mid-40s. So I don't view the Pacquiao proposition as a realistic proposition. The Spence proposition is a little more realistic, though not realistic overall.
Just a bit more than Manny, and it's because of what Nestor said, that, well, Errol didn't retire, and he only has one loss, just one professional loss. I don't think it would take much from Errol to get those same fanboys galvanized again if he comes back and fights a Barrios.
Beats him up.
Now here today, there are people that are convinced that Errol is a shot fighter and he shouldn't fight anymore. But if he were to come back and beat somebody up the way he used to beat guys up, enough of his fans, enough of his supporters would rally behind him that him and Boots could be a big fight.
Theoretically.
No, but of course, that would require a more solid ETA from Errol Spence Jr. than we've seen the last year and a half, going on two, that he was supposed to fight Sebastian Fundora, and all of that fell apart. That all turned out to be bullshit.
Nothing happened.
Would require a more solid ETA and a corner situation from Errol Spence Jr. than what we've seen, because upon parting ways with his career-long trainer, Derek James, nobody new got hired. Who's supposed to be training him now?
Doesn't look like he hired anybody.
Until he does hire somebody, until that news breaks, it doesn't look like he's coming back, so neither proposition is all that realistic. I think the biggest and best fights for Boots, for the money, well, they're not at 147. I think they're at 154. One fight in particular, the Virgil Ortiz fight, that has been a hot-button topic for some months now.
We know that some effort went into trying to make it on one of those Riyadh season shows, but Boots chose to stay at 147 to become undisputed.
A realistic fight that's worth some money is the Virgil Ortiz fight, and maybe the Xander Zayas fight if Xander beats Sebastian Fundora and becomes unified junior middleweight champion. If he's still there when Boots moves up, that's a big fight too. Volunteering what are these retirees like Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr., a quasi-retired fighter.
It's farce.
It's farcical. As a boxing fan myself, I don't actually want to see Manny Pacquiao keep fighting. Not at his age. And Errol, the jury's still out on Errol. He's not too old to come back, but he doesn't seem that motivated either. So why would I want to see him fight Jaron Ennis?
I want to see Jaron Ennis fight somebody who's all in their prime, unbeaten, just like he is, and making waves. That's Virgil, that's Xander.
To a lesser extent, that's Brian Norman, because he's an unbeaten champion. Those fights are more to my liking than these suggestions.
To a degree, they're more realistic.
We'll see what happens and whether or not Jaron Ennis will be able to see himself crowned undisputed in his time, or will he move up sooner than later? We'll see.